Hello, it's Dawn Michelle and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about when I don't tarot journal. Now, if you've watched the majority of the videos on my channel, you might know that tarot journaling is a huge part of my practice. It is the way that I kind of work my way through readings, through different practices and processes that I'm currently working through. It's a way for me to reflect back on the work that I've already done, as well as kind of mine for additional information. When I'm doing readings on particular situations or particular growth work that I'm doing, I find it really helpful for that. And I do have a whole 3-part series on how and why I tarot journal. So we're not going to go into that today because today's not about the tarot journal. Today we're going to talk about some of the other readings that I do throughout a day, and not only necessarily just readings, but interactions with my decks. That's kind of how I like to frame it, because it's not always a full-blown reading. Sometimes it's just a card pull. Sometimes the goal is to get a message, and sometimes the goal is something else entirely. But these are all times when I don't journal. So I don't write down anything about the cards that I pull or the spreads that I did or anything like that, because these are very much in the moment interactions or temporary interactions with the cards. So I'll kind of explain what I mean by that as we go along. So there's a few times throughout the day, in any given day, that I will come to my cards for various things, and I will use different decks for various activities or various interactions. And so I thought today we'd just kind of go through all of those little practices that I have where I don't actually tarot journal. And it's not about reflecting long term, it's about being in the moment with a card or with the deck or whatever the case may be. So that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna start with the morning pull, and this is oftentimes a single card pull, but if I feel like I'm needing more support or more information in any given day, then I'll pull 3 cards. So the general 3-card reading that I kind of like to start my day with is usually what to focus on, so what my focus is for the day. A lot of times I will use Oracle for this position, and then we have, what to release and what to embrace. And this just kind of gives me something to think about throughout the day. I don't necessarily see it as being predictive or prescriptive for my day. I don't, like I've mentioned many times before, if I get the Tower card, that doesn't mean I'm gonna have a Tower day, right? It just means that I need to be aware of that energy might be somewhere in my vicinity at this time. Again, it's not predictive, it's not prescriptive. It doesn't mean that that's exactly the type of day I'm gonna have. It's just what I like to be aware of. I do not journal about them most of the time anymore. I used to, and it was too time consuming. This particular reading for me is meant to be just, an energetic reflection for the day of something that I can keep in mind, but not necessarily something that I want to have long-term to reflect back on, because this is just for today. It's not meant to be for 6 months from now when I flip back through a tarot journal. What I will do most of the time is take a picture. I keep the picture on my phone so that I can refer to it throughout the day. And then certainly if I don't refer to it throughout the day, I definitely look back at it at the end of the evening and kind of look back on where those energies might have shown up for me in the day. And then I generally delete the photo. I don't even keep the photo, because it's a interaction that's meant to just be for today, right now, and it's not something that I need to mull over for, days on end or months from now. Again, I've done videos on my kind of morning and evening routines, how I work with decks throughout the day. It does kind of shift and change depending on what's going on in my life, as well as, what I have, where I'm at in my practice. So it's not always the same thing every time. This is as it currently is and what I'm currently doing. So on the flip side of that, I also do a evening pull, and this is usually the pull that I do before I kind of settle in at night For the evening, I'm usually, in my bedroom at this point, and this is when I'm gonna like chill out and, maybe watch some tarot tube or watch some TV or read my book or, whatever it is that I'm gonna be doing. I'm gonna pull out these 2 decks. These aren't the ones that I'm currently working with at night because they're in my bedroom and I was too lazy to go get them. But these were the 2 decks that I used for my evening pull last month in August, even though I think I forgot to mention them, but they were my decks for a couple of months. I don't tend to change out my evening decks near as often as I do other decks. They tend to hang out in my room for 2-3 months at a time. So my evening pull is kind of like my morning pull in that I'm doing a 3-card reading, and I generally do this with a little pocket deck. So I'll pull my 3 cards, and this is a reflection on my day. Now, you remember I had my morning pull, right? And I've reflected back on that. And at this point, I usually still have the photo on my phone. So I can look back and see that's where my day started. This is where my day is ending. And that gives me, just something to think about. And then generally what I like to do is pull an oracle card. I'm very fond of using sort of these sort of goddess energy decks before bedtime. I love the little Mother Mary one that I have here. I also, use the Kuan Yin one. There was a couple of other small decks that I've used for this particular practice. I like the pocket ones just because they're small and not like, they're easy to store at my bedside. But anyway. So what I like to do is look here at my oracle card, and this is kind of like, we had my morning cards. These are my evening cards to kind of see how I'm wrapping up my day. Maybe some things that I might want to keep in mind for tomorrow. To be perfectly honest, sometimes these do feel like they speak a little bit more to the next day. I don't take pictures or anything of this. I don't really journal about it. I don't really share it or anything like that. These are just for me personally, my own messages. But I generally remember what my 3 cards were the next day. Like I won't remember them later on that afternoon, but in the morning I generally remember. And sometimes it's kind of funny because sometimes I'll get repeating cards that show up when I do my morning pull again. So then I like to pull one of my little pocket oracles and I look at the message. Again, I love these types of decks with the message on the back for this practice because it's like all in one. I don't have to go thumbing through a guidebook. So I get my little message, and this is kind of the thing that I try to take to heart and kind of take with me as I transition and kind of wind down for the evening, and something that I kind of want to be thinking about. So I love to do those pretty much every night. Sometimes if I don't have a ton of energy, or I'm just like super tired, or I just don't have the time, I'll not do the 3-card tarot pull. I'll just pull a single oracle card, but I almost always will at least pull a oracle card. It's very few times where I haven't pulled at least a single oracle card before going to bed. Again, not things that I journal about, but these are things that I like to keep in mind and really take to heart more than keep in mind for the bedtime one. It's like the morning time is what to keep in mind and the nighttime is what to take to heart, and that's kind of how I see them. So another thing that I like to do quite often is that I like to pull a card to start my work day. So I'm real big into transition readings or transition pulls because they're not necessarily like big, huge readings. They're usually single card pulls, although occasionally I'll pull 3 cards for a transition reading. But I really like the idea of kind of using the cards to help me distinguish between one type of mindset or activity that I'm in and another. And again, like big things throughout the day. So I tend to pull a card to have a interaction or to have a message for starting my workday. And then a lot of times I will pull a card or 2 or 3 to help me transition out of my work space and into like family life or whatever I have going on. Like kind of separating work from personal life, because my work and personal life all happens under the same roof. While I do have like my office is separate, like I do personal things in here as well, right? My tarot practice is very personal. My journaling is very personal. The creative projects that I do are personal, but I also like work in here as well. So I like to pull a oracle card to start my day. A lot of times I use Oracle because I have like a single card that I will set up for the day and, you know, see what kind of a message that has for me, usually in terms of my work life. And I definitely tend to be drawn to decks that reflect my work life and the things that I'm trying to do. Like this one is great, this little Wisdom of Haviz. I hope I pronounced that correct, because it's very creative, it's very supportive, it's very nurturing, but there's a lot of creativity in this deck. There's a lot of color, there's a lot of movement, and I feel like that really reflects my work life really well. Those are things that I try to incorporate in what I do in terms of the work that I'm putting out in the world. So a deck like this kind of helps me just think about, you know, where I might want to take opportunity today, or maybe where I need to rest deeply or have some courage or relax, right? Get my hard work done and then I can relax. So I like to pull a card, and I have a little card stand at my computer desk where I will pull one of these and set it up for the day. And then, you know, it just stays up until basically I'm done with work for the day. And then I take it down. For those, you know, transition readings, sometimes I will use the same oracle. Sometimes I'll use different oracles. Tarot of Light, which used to be Art of Love Tarot, is another one of my favorite decks for doing that. But you can use any deck, any tarot, any oracle, or whatever it is. So sometimes I will pull some transition readings where I'm like, okay, so I'm transitioning from work life to family life. What do I need to keep in mind? Right? And I can pull a few cards for this. Most of the time I really only use one card, and I really only use Oracle, but you can totally use Tarot too. But again, just another example of like interactions with my cards that I don't journal about. Another thing that I like to do with my cards, or interactions that I like to have with my decks, is sometimes what I call like mindful moment pulls, where I just kind of like, I need to take a break. Whether it's because I'm in a particular project and like I just a little bit overwhelmed by it, or starting to feel like I'm feeling a little burnt out, or I just need to kind of take a moment and pause and collect my thoughts and figure out where I want to go from here. I love using my cards for that. I in particular like to use decks that shuffle well. Shuffling is definitely an activity that I enjoy doing with my cards. The act of shuffling itself for me is very mindful, and I know I've talked about this in other videos as well, but I like to just sit and shuffle my deck and kind of take a moment to breathe and just slow down and just kind of re-ground and recenter myself, and then just pull a card and see what the message is. Again, it's nothing that I journal, nothing that I'm gonna save to ponder later on at any great length. I don't even take a picture of it. It's just for in the moment. So in this case, it's actually more about the whole process and the whole practice of shuffling and breathing and grounding and getting centered and pulling that message as kind of like that wrap up to that whole experience. And it only takes a few minutes, but it's really helpful when I'm feeling like I just need a little bit of a break. I just need a couple of moments to kind of recenter myself and get clear about what it is that I need to be doing. So let's pull in a couple more decks, because another thing, what I find myself doing throughout the day is coming to the cards when I have need of guidance or advice about something, right? Something in particular. So I'll grab a deck, and I usually do Tarot and Oracle for this. And I will pull cards to find out more about my situation. Now, the positions that I use will vary because it kind of depends on what it is that I'm coming to the cards for. If I just need a little bit of guidance in the moment, if I'm just like, there's this situation going on and I just need to take a moment and get a little bit of clarity before I react or before I engage. It could also be, you know, there's a particular situation happening in my life or in my family or with my work that I need a little bit of advice, and I need a moment to kind of collect my thoughts and figure out, you know, what's going on in this situation and how do I feel about it, or what do I need to know. So that tends to be what I will that tends to be, again, another reading that I don't journal about it, because this is a very much in the moment thing, and it really revolves around looking for clarity or advice on something going on right here, right now. So it's not going to matter in 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, right? It's just for right now. And generally, I'm a huge fan of 3-card draws. Clearly, that's what I do most of the time. So I'll think about the situation and I'll ask the cards, for advice. I generally don't use positional spreads for this type of work, just because most of the time I like the cards to kind of tell me what it is that I need to know. But if I do have specific questions in mind, I will definitely pull those into the reading that I'm doing. But I like to pull at least 3 cards, sometimes more. Again, it's more of an intuitive thing. It's more about how I feel, more about the situation itself. So I'll pull a couple cards to see what's going on, what do I need to know, and the tarot kind of gives me some clarity on what I need to know about whatever situation that I'm currently in or whatever I have a question about. And then I like to pull an oracle card for the kind of advice, the wrap up, the okay, where do I go from here with it? So we've got hold on to me. So that's interesting. So this would be kind of like, here's the situation and here's the advice for how I'm going to, or how to best interact with that situation, or maybe something that I want to think about in terms of how I'm reacting to the situation. Again, this is not something that I'm journaling about. This is not something that I'm holding on to for later for deep reflection. This is just me getting some clarity in the here and now. So I really enjoy using tarot in that way of just kind of helping me to understand what's going on and how things might be progressing for me and what I need to know about any given situation. Again, it's a very in the moment thing. It's not a tomorrow thing. It's a right now thing. And so I don't need to journal about it. I don't need to hold on to it for forever and ever. I just need to get some advice right here, right now. Another thing that I like to use my cards for, and you saw this if you saw my August wrap up, my August reflections, a lot of times I like to use my decks for creative work as well. So I will use decks to help me kind of work my way through different projects. So if I'm working on a particular project, maybe I might want to figure out, what do I need to know about this project? That's the same card we just looked at. So let's pull this one. The Snow Shepherdess. This is one of those decks that I would have to look that up. So let me try, let's pull a different card. Okay, let's go with this. Let's go with Play With Me, because I don't want to use a card that I would have to like get into the guidebook in order to even make some sense of it. So Play With Me. So if I'm working on a project, a lot of times I'll pull an oracle as kind of like, this is the focus of what it is that I'm working on. And then the tarot will provide me a lot of times with kind of like where I'm at and where I need to get to with this project, the oracle card being the sort of bridge or conduit between those two. And I showed that last month when I talked about working with a couple of decks with my fiction projects. So I find this to be very helpful because it allows me to kind of take a moment and think about whatever it is, the project that I'm working on, whether it's like a writing project or a creative project or, like a tarot project or something like that for me. It allows me to kind of look at, this is where I am currently, this is where I need to get to with this work, and this is what I can do in between to help me get there. And I find that that's helpful to just kind of get me going. It kind of, if you've ever experienced like you have to write something and you're sitting there staring at the blank page and you have no idea where to begin, this process kind of helps me with that personally, because like it's not a blank page anymore. Now I kind of have this idea in the back of my mind. I have this message that I can carry with me into the project, into whatever it is that I'm working on. So I find that to be really, really helpful. So advice on things, clarity about situations, those are all things that I definitely will pull cards for, but not journal about. And then getting some really advice again, right? Still advice, getting some advice on the projects and things that I'm working on. Again, that also functions very much as like get this back in here. Again, it also functions very much as like a transition reading too, because when I go from whatever it was I was doing before to now I'm working on a particular project or something, doing that kind of focus reading with where I am, where I need to be, also helps create a transition between what I was doing and what I'm going to be doing. Hopefully that makes some sense. So another thing that I like to do is just sometimes hang out with my decks. I don't have a particular question. I don't have a need. I'm not really looking for any sort of clarity or advice or anything like that. I just want to play with cards. Like, I just want to play with my decks. I just want to look at the images. I just want to shuffle. It's kind of like the mindful moment thing, except for like, it's not about me trying to ground or center or anything like that. I'm just playing. I'm just having fun. And so one of the things that I like to do is get decks that feel like that kind of energy to me, that like feel like they're fun and playful, and they just have, you know, something fun to share with me. And I'll usually, again, me and my 3 cards, but I'll usually do a little 3-card pull and just see what the deck has to say. Sometimes I also like to just kind of play with a couple of different decks together. So I'll grab a couple tarot, a couple oracle, or usually a oracle and a couple tarot, and I'll build like little deck families. Sometimes I also just look through the decks. Like, right? Just sit here and look through the cards because they're pretty and I like them and they make me happy. And that's a totally valid interaction with the deck, in my opinion. Like, it doesn't always have to be this really deep, soul-searching, growth-promoting, shadow diving type of a work. Sometimes I just like to hang out with my decks and have some fun and pull some cards and, you know, just have a play. So that is a little look and discussion about the times when I don't tarot journal. So the times when I'm having interactions with my decks, or I'm going to my decks for certain things, but I'm not journaling about it. I don't write anything down. At most, I take a picture. And even at that, I don't tend to keep it. It's like, you know, I'll take a picture of my morning draw and then it gets deleted after my evening pull at night because I don't need it anymore. So I just wanted to share kind of that aspect of my practice as well, because, you know, I talk a lot about the decks that I work with for monthly medicine, the decks that I use for my Sunday readings, or the decks that I use for this particular practice or that particular practice. But I do have other sort of quote unquote practices or interactions with my decks throughout the day on any given day. And it's not anything that I journal or put a whole lot of energy or effort into. These are just momentary interactions meant to kind of support my day, wrap up my day, help me transition, help me ground and connect and get advice, get some clarity, and have a little fun. And I can do all of that without ever cracking open my tarot journal. I know it sounds blasphemous, but it's totally true. And some of my best interactions with my decks are actually those moments when I'm not tarot journaling, when I'm just being with the cards, hanging out with the messages, and not putting it all down and trying to pick it all apart for deeper layers and messages and meanings. I can just sit with the cards as they are and the messages as they are and go on from there. And it can be a really great, nourishing experience. It can be something that leads to some great inspiration or growth or expansion in my life, but it's momentary and it doesn't have to be something that is this big drawn out thing for me. So those are the times when I don't actually tarot journal. I'm just hanging out with my cards or doing some different kind of workings with them. So I thought I would just share that as kind of like that counterbalance to all of my really deep structured practices that I have, because I think it is in that balance that for me helps me create a well-rounded tarot practice, because I do have that very structured, very serious, very significant work that I do with the tarot. But then I also have the interactions that are just in the moment or for fun or for whatever, because I feel like playing with my decks. So that is it for me today. As always, I will leave links for everything that I've shown here in the description box below. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I look forward to sharing with you again soon.